Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. We are New Orleans.
Y'all trying to get a ticket, that's all that was.
You need us.
And I think y'all know the New Orleans crew by now. By the way, crew starts with the letter K and ends with an E. If you ain't been in New Orleans, you don't understand, but we have G. Park and Colin Reingold, my colleagues at the Public Defender's Office, Rosanna Cruz and Norris Henderson, our voices from the community from an organization called Voices of the Ex-Offender. We have Andre Maddox here from the DA's office. He oversees the diversion program in New Orleans. Now, we have chosen as our reform effort an enhancement of the district attorney's diversion program. So the name, the working title of our reform is, wait for it, the Diversion Enhancement Program.
Yeah. Most deaf.
That's a working title. Thanks, Cynthia, for the suggestion. New Orleans is a city
I
of...
just want to know for a second, they didn't call it like NAACP, ACLU, because those names are taken. Go ahead. It's all in my book.
Excuse me, what's your point?
Just noting that for the record, Your Honor.
New Orleans is a city of soul and survival, right? New Orleans is a city of passion and problems, all right? New Orleans is a city right now that is undergoing a lot of scrutiny in its criminal justice system. There's a lot of change that we hope will be change that will benefit the citizens of New Orleans that's happening in the New Orleans criminal justice system. There have been, I can't even tell you how many assessments, how many reports that have been issued. The New Orleans Police Department was under a federal investigation with predictably scathing results. Our court systems, in a lot of ways, have improved so much since Hurricane Katrina. We really have a long way to go. And this is the entire criminal justice system, from the public defender's office through the entire court system. So it's against that kind of a backdrop that we seek to find a project that can try to have an impact that will benefit all citizens of New Orleans, and specifically with the Racial Justice Improvement Project, try to improve the delivery of services and improve the system for people of color. So we chose the diversion program not because we found bias in the results, we didn't, and not because the program is not successful. It has been successful, right? But we chose the diversion program basically for two reasons. Number one, as G said yesterday, the population and the demographics of New Orleans is, what do we say, 65% or more people of color. So any change is going to impact people of color in New Orleans, because that's what our city is made up of, and that's the majority of our city. Second, we did find that the length of stay, even though arrests are down, the length of stay for people in prison is up. We kind of haven't figured out why that is, but even though arrests are down, the length of stay for people in prison is up. And African Americans are 50% more likely to have a longer length of stay, or stay in jail 50% longer than Caucasians. So any reform or any program that we can come up with that will divert people from prison, get people out of jail sooner, is going to have a positive racial impact in New Orleans. And so that's why we chose the diversion program, because it's a program that we believe can get people out of jail sooner, can help them improve their lives, and help them make meaningful change in how they live going forward. The diversion program in New Orleans is run pretty exclusively by the district attorney's office. The district attorney sets the policy and Ms. Maddox pretty much decides who gets in the program and who doesn't. So there's an eligibility screener in the DA's office who screens, and you can jump in if I get any of this wrong, but there's an eligibility screener in the DA's office who looks at every single case that is prosecutable by the DA's office. Screens every single case and every single potential client for eligibility for the diversion program. If the person is found eligible, then they get a ticket which allows them, which is basically entry into the program. The program is entirely voluntary. The person who's accused of the crime has to volunteer to participate in it. And once the person accepts the program, once the person decides that they want to participate, there is an intense psychosocial screening to determine what the person's needs are, and then an individualized treatment plan is developed for each person who participates in the program. So when we thought about what reforms we wanted to implement, we tried to figure out how we can get more people into this really successful program, right? A program with limited resources, obviously. And so we basically talked about 3 different proposals in small steps so that we can try to get people into the program, prove that it works, prove the success, and then once that's proven, try to apply those same lessons that we've learned into expanding the program, maybe even expanding the eligibility criteria, right? We do have a judge that is a part of our task force who could not make it to this conference, and we have had a representative from the district attorney's office who's actually a prosecutor. Ms. Maddox is not a prosecutor. She's a master's level counselor who oversees the program and oversees resources, social workers, and counselors who actually administer services to clients in the program. But we do not have, and we've had different prosecutors as members of the task force before, but they are not present here today. And so part of the point of that is to indicate that, you know, Cynthia's point earlier about trying to get buy-in from different members of the community, right? So if you're going to propose reforms to a program that is led and controlled and selected by the district attorney's office, that's someone who has to be on the team, someone that we have to convince to buy into the proposed reforms that I'm going to outline to you. So the first proposed reform is to take a small group of clients who already qualify under the current eligibility requirements and decrease their length of time in the program, but still give them the tools that they need to succeed. So by doing that, you can expand the number of people that you serve by lengthening or shortening the amount of time they actually have to participate in the program. So one of the proposals is to take individuals that are charged with felony property offenses, first offense with non-violent histories, right? So if you can take a pilot program of those individuals, people who already qualify, give them the tools that they need to succeed while shortening their time in the program, you can raise the level of success while being able to admit new people to the program and serve a greater population. And we think that we can sell this part of the program to different members of the system. We can, for judges, we can convince them to take those cases off of their docket so that these are now not cases that they have to go to trial on and go through the system to conclusion. They will instead be diverted into the DA's diversion program, work those cases off, whatever the requirements will be, whether it's community service, whether it's educational requirements, whether it's to get a GED program. These are cases that no longer have to go through the system, that won't be taking up spots in jail, and that won't have to go through the system and thereby save the entire system money. So that's one reform that we came up with. Another reform is to accept people charged with prostitution. There is a felony prostitution charge in Louisiana. What we found out was that people charged with prostitution charges are eligible currently for the district attorney's diversion program, But because of the nature of the charge, because of the nature of the clients that are charged with that offense, it's a notoriously difficult population to supervise. The failure to appear rate is much higher among people that are charged with prostitution, male and female. And they tend to select themselves out of the program. They tend not to want to volunteer to participate in the program. But the reason why that population is so important is because of a recent change in the law. Previously, people charged with felony prostitution were subject to sex offender registration requirements.
No.
Yes.
15 years.
Wow.
Yes.
Yes.
That is just terrible.
It's awful. It really is. Now,
And
there's
it's
been,
exactly this.
This is the,
It's exactly
the
the same
second
as.
offense, right?
This is
the,
yeah. It's solicitation for crime against nature. It's what kind of sex you have. So if you solicit for anal or oral sex, the police officer has the discretion to charge you with a felony level as opposed to a misdemeanor. And it was mandatory jail time, and you had to register as a sex offender for 15 years. Massive requirements. If you violate those, you could have your registry period extended. And it was the current law up until they just changed it, but it's not
August 15th.
August 15th, and it's not retroactive. So there's a lawsuit right now, a class action lawsuit that is trying to address the folks who have already been impacted. It's completely disproportionate. If you look at the sex offender registry in the state of Louisiana, it's completely disproportionate. 75% of the people are black women because right, and so yeah, it's this crazy thing. And then what happens is because these women are fruit. It's predominantly
Minnesota's outraged. Calm down.
This is rightly so.
No,
Anyway, so the way that the law has changed, now if it's your first offense, you don't have to register as a sex offender, but they didn't actually take the law off the books completely.
So now I'm confused. I thought I understood it first. Your first offense is the misdemeanor and you're in municipal court. No registry. The second offense, it automatically is a felony? Where until the law's changed, you have to register and it's in district court.
Right. I mean, it's not the DA has charging discretion, obviously. They don't
Oh,
have to.
okay. I thought it was by operation of the statute.
so going forward, for new arrests, you don't have to register. But what about that class of people who existed and were charged with this charge prior to the change in the law? Those people are out there. If we can get them into the diversion program, they can successfully complete it, then they can avoid those registration requirements altogether. And there's already been a legislative determination that that's not fair, it's overly burdensome, it takes too many resources. And so it's basically giving life to what the legislature has already proposed should be happening. For some reason they didn't make it retroactive, I don't know why, but we can use this diversion program to target that population, which is predominantly African American population, and get them out from under those registration requirements.
But if, I'm just, since you said oral and anal sex, if you had, I assume,
Vaginal sex is not.
not,
No, that's the law.
It's not a crime against nature.
It's not a crime against nature.
Nature.
It's just a crime, but not against nature.
Are there any leaders down concerning sex trafficking? Only because that's a huge issue now all across the country, where many of the prostitutes basically are being trafficked internally, domestically, and
Right.
obviously we've had to deal with a lot of issues in Brooklyn, where now we just started a sex trafficking unit within our Rackets Bureau, and we've indicted at least almost a dozen cases.
Is that a problem in New Orleans too? The trafficking? You're seeing like women who are being brought in and...
It is there, there's no question that it's there, especially during large events. We will have a Super Bowl suit, we will have a lot of women trafficked in for that. Are we actually finding them, arresting people, doing something about it? No.
It's very,
I mean, there's restaurants the way they bring people in. We don't have sweatshops like to build, make clothes and things like that, but we have restaurants, particularly in the Asian community, that will pop up, and a lot of the workers in there are not speaking
But these
English.
things are not just really concerning foreign-born and so forth. We're talking in
Right,
terms
oh, and then, yeah, state to
these
state,
are
yeah.
people who are preying on the young, people who need the help and so forth, and they started off thinking they love them and so forth. Somehow they start trafficking them. It's very, very common and often.
The first cases in Louisiana, my office prosecuted just a few years ago for even try, and it was a girl that was brought to Arkansas and then back to Louisiana, and it was a young girl.
Because we were also, I'm getting a lot of what we call 440 motions in New York for women who have convictions for prostitution, who, when they pled, were under 18. And so those are being eliminated under our new law. So we're actually, but I'm getting a lot of motion practice now to eliminate those convictions.
Well, and Mark can maybe speak to this better, but Mark's office just initiated some new policies around prostitution that I think are pretty impressive.
Well, it's the philosophical discussion. Basically, all prostitution is considered trafficking. It's exploitation. That's the way we're addressing it. Right? They may say, I'm voluntarily doing this, but there's exploitation involved. So a lot of people have a hard time with that because they figure, well, if you want to be a prostitute, go ahead. We're looking at it, no, there's exploitation, especially with young girls. So we've got a tremendous initiative that we're part of.
And do you call that initiative PJI? Justice Initiative.
RJI.
Mark, we enter one of our cars.
Real justice via prostitution. I like that.
I think RJIP's already taken.
It's just a fake RJIP.
Let's let New Orleans finish. Let's talk about that.
Still registerable?
Not now.
Still now?
Second offender, yes.
Yes.
You mean now?
Because it's considered a felony. So first offense is a misdemeanor, so it's not registrable. If you second offense, it's a felony, so it is registrable.
Even now?
Even now.
Until the law is changed.
No, that's the new
That
law.
didn't change nothing.
That's the new law.
You have to understand, this is not New Orleans' idea. It has not, and I've been around 20 years in criminal justice. We've been trying to change this for a long time. But we happen to have a very conservative northern part of the state, and the religious right controls a lot of the legislature. And they don't like the concept of any of these kind of things. And so we have been fighting for a very long time just to get to this point. I can tell you 10 years of legislation that we've attempted to get to this point. So this is a huge victory. As poor as it sounds, that's the reality just to get to this point. So maybe we'll see some light in the next, but it's not coming from New Orleans. I just want everybody real clear, it's not the New Orleans people.
So I'm not clear now what changed and what's remaining. So what's going to, after August, what's still going to be the impact on the?
So the first time somebody gets arrested, it's a misdemeanor.
Right.
And they're
They don't
not
have to
gonna get,
register.
right, and the thing is that there were two concurrent, there are two similar charges, right? There's like, you could charge someone who was soliciting for oral sex with prostitution. The police have full discretion in that. It was just that there was also this other charge that you could charge people with, which was solicitation for a crime against nature.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So there was this kind of like,
Right, depending on what you charged, it triggered.
right, and
consequences.
so now people, the first time that they're arrested for misdemeanor solicitation.
And real quick, and I'll let you guys go in. And Michael, you were saying like if let's say the prostitutes were to go into the diversion program, they would not be subject to those registry requirements.
It would not result in a conviction.
Yeah.
Oh, I
It
see.
would not
Okay.
result in
I
the
understand.
prosecution of a
Okay.
criminal case.
Gotcha.
And we have some ideas on how we can,
Exactly, so you don't have that first one that triggers the second.
Right.
2 bites of the apple.
yeah, and we have some ideas on how to implement that in New Orleans, right? I mean, there's another jurisdiction, Baltimore, who's had some success in their prostitution diversion program. And so part of what we're going to be asking is to go to Baltimore and see how their program works. You know, how have they made it work? What have been the challenges to implementing the program for them, and how did they overcome those challenges? And what can we do to make it even better? You know, the program in Baltimore and the way it works there is not going to necessarily look the same in New Orleans and how it'll work here. But it's all about trying to identify the models of success, learning about them and trying to replicate them in our jurisdiction. So that's one idea that we have. Another idea that we have is that there is an organization in New Orleans called Women with a Vision, and Rosanna sits on the board of that organization. So to try to kind of connect that organization with the DA's diversion program, right, to try to get more compliance, to try to let people know that this program is out there, and to try to get them to understand what the requirements are and get them to fulfill the program. Right, so we have an idea, we have a target population, and we have an idea on how to implement that. And we really think it's going to benefit our clients and the city greatly. And then the third idea that we had for implementation is to try to get a population that's not currently eligible for diversion into the diversion program. And again, that is not Andre's call, but it's the district attorney's call when there's a policy change. Right, so currently, your second possession of a small amount of a narcotic is a felony. Your first possession of a small amount of narcotic is a felony, actually.
Second marijuana.
Yeah, your second marijuana conviction is a felony. So if your client is stopped on the street with one small rock of crack cocaine, no previous record, that's a felony in the state of Louisiana, right? And so your second and third and fourth felonies result in longer minimum jail times. So if you have somebody who's an addict who can't stop using, who gets arrested for the fourth time, that person is looking at 20 years to life in prison because they're a drug addict. So if we could somehow get that population into diversion, we can save that person 20 years of jail. We can get that person treatment that they may never have gotten a chance to get before, and we can divert those cases out of the criminal justice system and into a treatment model, which is where they belong. So that's another proposal that we have as a way to use the diversion program to have an impact on the criminal justice system. So those are our proposals. We have a long way to go to try to implement them, but we have some ideas and we have some ways that we can try to go and some suggestions on what to do. I want to thank Cynthia and Salma for putting the trip together and for facilitating the discussion. And we did have some spirited discussion. And that's just how it's going to be when you have different members of the criminal justice system coming together. People that are natural adversaries, when you sit them down at the table and they have to talk and communicate, even if they have a common goal, there's going to be some spirited discussions. There's going to be some disagreements. And so it's all about trying to find ways for people to come together on a solution that's going to benefit everyone in the system. Yeah.
Can I ask, how is the New Orleans DA's office positioned in terms of these, the crack cocaine, second arrest, felonies? Are they sort of amenable to listening to diversion programs? I mean, what's the
Second time, with one prior conviction, yes, even with 2 prior convictions, we can look at it. When they get 3 prior convictions or 4 prior convictions, that's when it's called a multiple bill. That's an enhanceable charge with jail time that they look at. My prosecutors prosecute that way.
Right.
And it's been that way for a very long time. So we're just got not just this administration, but the 2 prior administrations.
So currently, right now, if it's the first or second arrest, even though it could be a felony, they're not given the chance.
It is a felony. Except for marijuana. Marijuana's the only case.
So they wind up getting convicted as a felony?
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Not if they do diversion. If they do diversion, there's no conviction.
Okay. And most of them do it now? No?
I do have a comment about your prostitution diversion program. We just got funded to do a diversion program. We were able to bring to the table the state police, the county police, and the city police, who were the great proponents of the project, led by a professor at the University of Delaware. And I think we got close to like either $500,000 to do a diversion program that not only does diversion, but we do housing, mental health, all of those components. And we don't call them prostitutes anymore. They're not calling them sex workers. So they don't even arrest now. We just sort of take them and put them in some type of social program.
Where'd you get funding?
BJI. They looked at you like, where's our money? You gave our money to Delaware.
sorry, you go ahead, sorry.
I mean, doesn't it make more sense, actually, those people on their third and fourth arrest, those are the ones that need a diversion program?
I'm standing up because I'm the one that's
preaching.
preaching.
Somebody's just like messing around, they had it first time, second time, but by the third and fourth time, you know
they
they're
got it.
probably a lot hardcore.
By
And
fourth
they don't
time,
have
right.
violent history. Those are the people that need treatment the most, right? I mean, I'm only saying this, listen.
You got it.
If the DA's office, and I'm pretty much, I can put myself out on the limb. If the DA's office is not amenable to it, somebody contact the DA's office and have him meet my boss. He'll take him in, I'm telling you right now. Open my boss. Who's my boss? Right there.
There's your boss.
We actually, and in all fairness, we actually have reached out to your boss in the past and have had conversations with him about the way you guys do business, so that's not so foreign of an idea. And it's something we can talk about. It has a lot to do with their history, and it has a lot to do with violence in their past. And there are some people who, in fact, come to us where their charges were just prior possession cases, and I think that we have some possibility there. But when we start looking at people who've had armed robbery convictions or other convictions in their past, then we need
don't,
to.
actually, in our programs, actually, once they have a violent, like a conviction for a violent felony offender, they don't get it.
So
Because they wind up mixing up with the people who are just hardcore addicts, and we don't allow those.
So the multiple bills are for any conviction in their past that we can consider felony conviction that can enhance that penalty. So we would only, what we're talking about here, we would only be talking about people who had continuous possession cases over and over and over again. And doing a risk assessment on those people and looking at their motivation to change and their readiness to change and where they are, and the risk to the community, and deciding if that's something that we can do. So that's.
I'm sorry, Angie, I'm not picking on you. You
Taking a hard hit on
She's a tough lady. She's taken worse. Like I said,
I mean,
it's
it's not
big
her
difficult.
specific, right, policies don't come from us, right? Everyone understands that. It's not, she's not the DA making these policies,
Okay, we're gonna have to, you guys just got done?
Yeah, that concludes our presentation.
Oh,